Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name is Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 206 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. All right, her head's still really big, but that's good because it's only going to get smaller as I carve it. But I've taken a little more material off, and you can really start to see some of the contours of her face. And I'm going to, I don't know if this will show. If you look up at her now, you can really start seeing her posture, and it's hard to get. I don't want to turn the camera. I don't want to turn the camera the long way, which would make it easy. But it's starting to be a lot easier to see the way her body is shaped, and I think I'm going to let me hang the camera up and so I can explain a couple of things. All right, hopefully that'll show what I want to point out. It's changing now to where it's really starting to look the way you want it to look. It's starting to look like a figure. It's starting to have good volume in the right places. I can look at her now and you can see how there's a thrust to her chest and her abdomen to bounce against her leg to make it look like she's striding forward. And as big and thick as she is, I mean, because everything's going to shrink, and it's really, you know, one of the old websites, one of the old masters in Barry, you know, said this is the snowman stage. You know, you got all this stuff roughed out and they're big and puffy. There's really, probably the only way you can really do it is to just practice. You have to do this more than once in order to get a good result. And so, and it's not the same as doing clay, because clay is so forgiving. You don't do clay right, you just fix it. And you amend it, and you don't like this, so you just push it, and you squish it, and it changes. And stone doesn't do that, and you can't go back. Now, she's still really thick here at the waist. You know, she's bigger than I am, and I'm not skinny, I'm kind of fat. So, it's imperative that I don't take away material too quickly, because if I took this off early, I wouldn't have the ability to move her slightly in the stone. As I reduce this to develop this sash and to develop the overhang of this blouse, because we're reaching the point where I'm going to just have to start carving her. I'm going to be done pointing. I'm going to have, you know, her head all together and get her hair approximately, you know, the mass where it needs to be. And you have to treat the hair the same way as you do two figures. Okay, if you've got two figures, if you take this hair, like I sunk a line here to roughly where some of the unions of her hair meets the side of her face. If I carve this hair and carve her face, her hair is going to go, it's going to be puffed way out past her head, and it's not going to look right. You have to carve from the outside in and then define the intersection. And so that means we have to leave an extra mass of hair. I still want to leave something here in order to have an easy way to true up this face, because this face is going to be, this edge is going to be very visible, okay? There'll be a little bit of this same face visible over here by the wing, behind the wing, where it goes down to meet this die. But there's going to be a lot of stuff going on there. There's going to be a wing, there's going to be an arm, there's going to be a flower, there's going to be another element here, there's going to be all this going on, and that edge going down there, as long as it's kind of straight and you've got a nice square intersection with this square element of the die top, nobody's really going to look at that. That's going to be really hidden and masked because you got all this other stuff going on. This is going to be the end of the stone, and people are going to see this this edge and this vertical face as a point of reference. And so this needs to be like bulletproof, fantastic, nice and flat, square, and just look great. And so I'd like to leave some of this. The problem with leaving a little short piece and having this extension while I'm working is it's really fragile. And so I'll leave it a little heavy for now. But I'm gonna have to just start carving this. As these feathers develop and shrink, you know, go back and cup under her, it's gonna boost her out. It's gonna make her look like she's coming out of the stone even more, because this mass is gonna be thinned and reduced, and so it's gonna make her look bigger. It's gonna be contoured differently. You've gotta remember the impact that you're gonna get as light shines on this. It will illuminate this face, and it will reflect that light, and it will make this look, it'll brighten her up, and that makes her look like she's proud, because she'll have additional lighting on her side that will make her stand out somewhat from the stone. But as she shrinks, you know, all these two elements, and that's like I was saying, you know, you have to treat the hair like a second element. And so that's one thing I never really, I always got kind of confused. Some people are very, very reluctant. They don't pursue multiple figure jobs with, you know, like marrying Christ, you know, marrying the Christ child, or, you know, Saint Francis and, you know, the animals or whatever, or just an art piece, because it's difficult. But they'll do the same. They'll do hair on a head, and it'll look great. It's just, you got to just take your head out of it and realize you're doing the same thing. You're just, whether it's big or small. But as all of these things shrink, it's going to make things look longer and leaner. She's going to look even taller than she does now. She's got a really good push right now, because her chest is forward just a little bit, and that matches the leg, like she's stepping, as opposed to being sunken back. The chest is leaning like this leg, like she's leaning forward on the leg. And it's, as the fabric defines her upper body better and defines this sash, this will help her abdomen look like it has more thrust, because we'll lose mass here, and that's going to make her look even better. This is when it starts getting fun, but this is when it starts getting dangerous. This is when you say, I want to put the face on. I want to do the fun stuff. I want to jump in and do everything. And hang on, go slow. I also wanted to point out, because we're working and doing all this, I'm up here and I'm working on all this, like her thumb, okay, instead of cutting an end, square end off on her thumb, I left it sloped, so it slopes down to the stone. That means that all this material that's fallen off of here is very unlikely to chip the end of her thumb. If you define the end of a finger, oh man, boy, those things pop off. Fingers and noses, and you know, something hits them and they fracture a little bit, and you get on them and they just break. So it's nice to have that tipped off there. But she's really starting to, you can really start to see her. And I don't know, I know on the video she looks really heavy, and she is. She's still big. The head is still big. But it's a lot easier to make the head smaller than it is to make it bigger. And there's a lot of figures out there that have a lot of statues and pieces that are installed, and they've got little pinheads for the body, you know, compared to the body. The head shrinks so much that they look weird. You know, she's planned to be 5'6". Right now she's 5'7", you know, because we added an inch down in her legs, and just stretched it. So that changed a little bit of the drapery. But that means that if I have to shrink her head a little bit and she gets a little bit smaller, I can take a little bit off the top to keep her looking balanced, and we'll still be in our 5'6",
spec that we planned on. But it's really looking good. It's really coming well, and I'm really impressed with how it's looking. And a lot of this has got to go back a fair amount because we're up over 2 inches here. See, that's barely 1 inch there. And this is 1, 2, 2¼ almost. So this has still got to go back. This is high, which I thought it was. But that's part of the difficulty of pointing with compasses on a very flat surface without having the quick forward that you have when you have opposing sides. When they're both flat and they come down like this, it's very challenging. So they're high, that's a good thing. If they were low, we'd be in trouble. So, but so I hope y'all can see it. I'm really happy. And I'm going to get back carving, and like I said, I'm going to leave this where I marked it so that as she shrinks, and I'm confident that's where I want everything to be. The same thing with not doing too much on her waist yet. I want her to be, she's going to be life size. Just like you hug somebody, just like you put your arms around somebody, you do that, and if you get a little skinny person, that's one thing, but if you get anybody that isn't a bone, a size 00 or whatever it is, little bitty, they're going to have some mass to them, and that's how big your stone has to be, plus the fabric on top. So she's coming really well. So back to work. Now, a pointing machine is a measuring device. That's all it is, okay? And there's nothing wrong with using it to measure what you're doing. Sometimes, like where I want to correct this side of her face, the left side of her face, I've got it pushed to, it's roughed in, it's close, and I've shot some points along the model and tried to stay up. But I can take this and set this machine to like this spot right here, this on her, it's over here on her eye. Then I can lift this off. Really don't even have to lift it off. See if I can show. Showing up, yeah. Then I can take it and go over here, put it on the model to see how it compares. And I've got at least that much extra material here that's got to come off her eye, okay? And so I'm still really big on around her. If I've got great volume around her eyes where I want it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to go back in and start working on her forehead. But that's just a check. You can take your pointing machine and check anything you want. To do it with a compass, yeah, you can take a measurement, but you're not going to triangulate it as well and then try to estimate where it is on the model because it doesn't work as easily. Pointing machine 1-to-1. We can set this up and drop it right in, and we can really know. But that right there is still at least ½ an inch high from where it is over here on the model. So we still got plenty of stone to take off. And that gives me a good understanding of where I've got volume and where I've got room to really make something look great. All right? So they're tools, okay? You got the thumbs. Do whatever you want with them. Make them work. When you've got chisels that chip, dress them, fix them. Don't think you can keep carving and keep using it with that chipped area and keep working around it, because what it'll end up doing is it'll fracture even worse. It'll continue to break. And if you've got a relatively thin tool, that isn't, like this one's long and thin compared to this one that's real thick. If you've got a thin tool especially, and you fracture it, you chip that edge, and you keep carving with it, you can lose a ton of carbide, and a good chisel will turn into a piece of junk, worn out useless chisel, really fast. So the key is to not chip them, and you're going to learn as you sharpen tools how to sharpen them. You know, this may be too steep for what you're doing, but if you get it really, really thin to where it's a really shallow edge, shallow angle edge, it may be too sharp for what you're doing. And so you're going to have to play with it, and you'll end up modifying your bevel to match your task. And you know, it still happens. You know, you'll still chip chisels, and as soon as you do, if you're on different stone, the stone's really hard. Like on, I don't know. I think probably in marble, probably the only way you're really going to chip anything is to blow a corner off, because you're using the corner like you shouldn't. But on hard stone, like if I'm carving an India jet black granite, or even sometimes even on Impala from Africa, I'll take them after I sharpen them, and then I'll take a rubbing stone and I'll brick that edge to blunt that edge off a little bit, or an old grindstone, and just scrape the edge on there to flatten it a little bit, and because otherwise they just shatter and blow out and blow out and blow out. And so on hard stone like that, you know, and a lot of colored stone is a different hardness than the gray or the blue. You'll end up quoting it with a differential. You know, you may charge another 15% for color. And because you're going to have more tools, you're going to have a higher tool cost, higher consumables. It's going to take longer, you have higher consumables. So, but if it chips, fix it. Don't think it's just going to heal. Don't think it'll be okay, because you'll lean on another part of that exposed fracture on towards an edge, and it'll blow out again and blow out again, and you can have the whole top of your chisel gone. So don't do it. And you can crack down into your body of your carbide to where you can lose the whole tool. So as soon as it fractures, don't carve with it. Put it up, get it fixed, get it sharpened. All right, back to work. Okay, I just wanted to show you. I'm trying to carve up here. I can't raise my suction anymore because of that big ballast. See how it's hitting right there on the, you know, where the pivot is? And see, it's a big ballast that goes up. That's the benefit. I don't know if I can feed them in, but that's why I got those two suction arms from Dario Studio, because they've got a spring ballast, and so everything is tied right in right around the friction hub right there, and there's none of that overhanging, so you can move this arm a whole lot more. And that's the good thing about those. If you take that ballast off, this falls down, and so it's not ideal. But this is the old-fashioned style, and then the later ones usually have a trunk, 4-inch pipe with ball and not just the hose. That's what Gary always had, but just thought I'd show you, because that's why I've got to have my pipes that I can reconfigure, because I got to take this one off and change it so I can actually get some suction up here where I'm trying to carve. Back to work. All right, I've pretty well reached a point. We're getting into the final, getting it really down, and then shrinking everything and making sure it's where it is. I can't change any of this. And so this honeycomb, this side still, I'm trying to work this side and understand it. I'm going to clean this off just to smooth her up a little bit. Still not going to take away the point, so I'm going to get rid of a bunch of the honeycomb. And because I'm going to have to go down to the final surface. See how this looks. She's still got a big head, but it still isn't all the way carved yet. A lot of the points are still there, but you can see softens her up a lot. Now I got to start working on, you know, we pretty much reached a point where we got to decide. Let me hang the camera back up. See how this looks. Okay. She's still a big girl, but she's coming really well. Got to shrink the head. Her hair's rounded off here at the top. Pretty good. I mean, this is the height. So just taking that bit off helps free her up a lot. Still got a lot of hair. Her head's still big, but you know, these brows on the plaster are the high part. So a lot of this has to go away. There's a lot of this that's going to shrink, and you will find that when you direct carve, you're way more apt to make things smaller than they're supposed to be as opposed to bigger. As I shrink her arm, tune this wrist up, push this elbow down a little bit, that's going to skinny her up a lot. This shoulder will probably go back a little bit more. This has to sink, and then this will come and be more concave as it falls across the top of her breast. And this will sink in because this is all proud of the collar. The collar still has to lay down on her collarbones in the upper part of her sternum, and so there's still a lot to do here to get her tuned up. But let me hang the camera up. But I think she's coming along pretty well. Looks really good with the muted light without the crazy shadows, and as she thins up, her stride forward is going to be good. And her hips, you can get into what all the figure means and where she's going to be looking out here as opposed to down at the grave. You know, a lot of figures will have them looking down at the grave. But they'll also, some of them will have them looking forward, looking beyond, because this is not, you know, the grave's not the end. You know, that's the whole point, is that this is where you're going to be forever. You've got a heavenly figure, and she's looking forward. She's leaving a remembrance on the stone on the memorial, but she's looking forward and looking outward, because she can see things that we can't. And so that's all part of the whole concept of angels and afterlife, and the icon, what the icons mean. So. But the more she shrinks up, the better and better she's going to look, and she's in a really, really good position. I'm really thrilled with it. It's coming well. It's a long process. And this is why I've said, the people that show up, and the first thing you want to do is cut a big angel. There's a lot to it, buddy. And to make it look good, and to get her to have all the volume that she's going to have, it requires her to be this heavy and thick. And so as we shrink this arm, we can get all this together. It's just, this is, you know, you trust the process, you hope it all works out. So I think this one's working out pretty well. So my name's Clinton Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculptor Studio with a Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.